Hi. Hello everyone, I'm Jeremy day393 of reading HarryPotter and the Order of the Phoenix. Let's get started. Currently on page 255. Let's go, lock in. Thank you for your support, Ron, Hermione said acidly. You handled it fine by yourself, Ron mumbled. Hermione sat down on her blank piece of parchment for a few seconds, then said edgily, "Oh, it's no good. I can't concentrate now. I'm going to bed." She wrenched her bag open. Harry thought she was about to put her books away, but instead she pulled out two misshapen woolly objects, placed them carefully on a table by the fireplace, covered with a few screwed-up bits of parchment and a broken quill, and stood back to admire the effect. "What in the name of Merlin are you doing?" said Ron, watching her as though fearful for her sanity. "They're hats for house elves," she said briskly, now stuffing her books back into her bag. "I did them over the summer. I'm a really slow knitter without magic, but now I'm back at school, and I should be able to make lots more." "You're leaving out hats for the house elves?" said Ron slowly, "and you're covering them with rubbish first?" "Yes," said Hermione defiantly, swinging her bag onto her back. "That's not on," said Ron angrily. "You're trying to trick them into picking up the hats. You're setting them free when they might not want to be free." "Of course they want to be free," said Hermione at once, though her face was turning pink. "Don't you dare touch those hats, Ron." She turned on her heel and left. Ron waited until she had disappeared through the door to the girls' dormitories, then cleared the rubbish off the woolly hats. "They should at least see what they're picking up," he said firmly. Anyway, he rolled up the parchment on which he had written the title of Snape's essay. "There's no point trying to finish this now. I can't do it without Hermione. I haven't got a clue what you're supposed to do with moonstones. Have you?" Harry shook his head, noticing as he did so that the ache in his right temple was getting worse. He thought of the long essay on giant wars, and the pain stabbed at him sharply, knowing perfectly well that he would regret not finishing his homework tonight when the morning came. He piled his books back into his bag. "I'm going to bed too." He passed Seamus on the way to the door leading to the dormitories, but did not look at him. Harry had a fleeting impression that Seamus had opened his mouth to speak, but sped up and reached the soothing peace of the stone spiral staircase without having to endure any more provocation. The following day dawned just as leaden and rainy as the previous one. Hagrid was still absent from the staff table at breakfast. "But on the plus side, no Snape today," said Ron bracingly. Hermione yawned widely and poured herself some coffee. She looked mildly pleased about something, and when Ron asked her what she seemed to be so happy about, she simply said, "The hats are gone. Seems the house elves do want freedom after all." "I wouldn't bet on it," Ron told her cuttingly. "They might not count as clothes. They didn't look anything like hats to me, more like woolly bladders." Hermione did not speak to him all morning. Double Charms was succeeded by Double Transfiguration. Professor Flitwick and Professor McGonagall both spent the first 15 minutes of their lessons lecturing the class about the importance of OWLs. "What you must remember," said little Professor Flitwick squeakingly, perched ever on a pile of books so that he could see over the top of his desk, "is that these examinations may influence your futures for many years to come. If you have not already given serious thought to your careers, now is the time to do so. And in the meantime, I'm afraid we shall be working harder than ever to ensure that you all do yourselves justice." They then spent more than an hour reviewing summoning charms, which according to Professor Flitwick are bound to come up in their OWL, and he rounded out the lesson by sending them their largest amount of charms homework ever. It was the same, if not worse, in Transfiguration. "You cannot pass an OWL," said Professor McGonagall grimly, "without serious application, practice, and study. I see no reason why everybody in this class should not achieve an OWL in Transfiguration, as long as they put in the work." The vial made a sad little disbelieving noise. "Yes, you too, Longbottom," said Professor McGonagall. "There's nothing wrong with your work except for lack of confidence. So, today we are starting vanishing spells. These are easier than conjuring spells, which you would not usually attempt until an EWT level, but but they are still among the most difficult magic you will be able to be tested on in your OWL. She was quite right. Harry found that the vanishing spell horribly difficult. By the end of the double period, neither he or Ron had managed to vanish their snails on which they were practicing. Now, Ron said hopefully that he thought his looked a little bit paler. Hermione, on the other hand, successfully vanished her snail on the third attempt, earning her a 10-point bonus for Gryffindor from Professor McGonagall. She was the only person not given homework. Everybody else was told to practice a spell overnight, ready for a fresh attempt on their snails the following afternoon. Now, panicking slightly about the amount of homework they had to do, Harry and Ron spent their lunch hour in the library looking up the uses of moonstones in potion making. Still angry about Ron's slur on her woolly hat, Hermione did not join them. By the time they reached Care of Magical Creatures in the afternoon, Harry's head was aching again. The day had become cool and breezy, and as they walked down the sloping lawn toward Hagrid's cabin on the edge of the Forbidden Forest, they felt the occasional drop of rain on their faces. Professor Grubbly Plank stood waiting for the class some 10 yards from Hagrid's front door, a long trestle table in front of her laden with many twigs. As Harry and Ron reached her, a loud shout of laughter sounded behind them. Turning, they saw Draco Malfoy striding toward them, surrounded by his usual gang of Slytherin cronies. He had clearly just said something highly amusing, because Crabbe Goyle, Pansy Parkinson, and the rest continued to snigger heartily as he gathered around the trestle table. Judging by the fact that all of them kept looking over at Harry, he was able to guess the subject of the joke without too much difficulty. "Everyone here?" barked Professor Grubbly Plank, once all the Slytherins and Gryffindors had arrived. "Let's crack on then. Who can tell me what these things are called?" She indicated the heap of twigs in front of her. Hermione's hand shot into the air. Behind her back, Malfoy did a buck-tooth imitation of her, jumping up and down in eagerness to answer a question. Pansy Parkinson gave a shriek of laughter that turned almost at once into a scream, as the twigs on the table leapt into the air and revealed themselves to be what looked like tiny pixie-ish creatures made of wood, each with knobbly brown arms and legs, 2 twig-like fingers at the end of each hand, and a funny, flat, bark-like face in which a pair of beetle-brown eyes glittered. "Ooh," said Parvati and Lavender, thoroughly irritating Harry. Anyone would have thought that Hagrid never showed them impressive creatures. Admittedly, the flobberworms had been a bit dull, but the salamanders and hippogriffs had been interesting enough, and the blasted scroots perhaps too much so. "Kindly keep your voices down, girls," said Professor Grubbly Plank sharply. Scattering a handful would look like brown rice among the stick creatures, who immediately fell upon the food. "So, anyone know the names of these creatures, Miss Granger?" "Bowtruckles," said Hermione. "They're tree guardians, usually live in wand trees." 5 points for Gryffindor, said Professor Grubbly Plank. "Yes, these are Bowtruckles, and, as Miss Granger rightly says, they generally live in trees whose lice is of wand quality. Anyone know what they eat?" "Wood lice," said Hermione promptly, which explained what Harry had taken for grains of brown rice were moving, but fairy eggs if they can get them. "Good girl, take another 5 points. So whenever you need leaves or wood from a tree in which a bowtruckle lodges, it's wise to have a gift of wood lice ready to distract or placate it. They may not look dangerous, but if angered, they will gouge out human eyes with their fingers, which, as you can see, are very sharp and not at all desirable near the eyeballs. So, if you'd like to gather closer, take a few wood lice and a bowtruckle. I have enough here for one between 3. You can study them more closely. I want a sketch from each of you with all the body parts labeled by the end of the lesson." Class surged forward around the trestle table. Harry deliberately circled around the back so that he ended up right next to Professor Grubbly Plank. "Where's Hagrid?" he asked her, while everyone else was choosing bowtruckles. "Never you mind," said Professor Grubbly Plank repressively. But it had been her attitude last time Hagrid had failed to turn up for class 2. Smirking all over his pointed face, Draco Malfoy leaned across Harry to seize the largest bowtruckle. "Maybe," said Malfoy in an undertone so that only Harry could hear him. "The stupid oaf's got himself badly injured." "Maybe you will if you don't shut up," said Harry out of the side of his mouth. "Thank you, everyone. That's all for today. Bye. See you tomorrow." Tomorrow we're going to read page 260. Bookmark, close. Peace out.